In this episode, 27 years had already passed since the death of the hero Himmel, and Frieren and Fern are in Worm, a trading city located in the Central Lands. The city exudes a certain calmness as they walk through its center. They decide to split up to restock supplies for their journey. Fern is in charge of essentials like food, water, and daily goods, while Frieren searches for herbs and other items. Fern thinks Frieren looks rather suspicious, considering they've been adventuring together for quite some time, and she doesn't expect anything good when Frieren has that look, suspecting she'll buy unnecessary things. Frieren bids farewell, saying they'll meet at the inn. Instead of sticking to her task, Fern decides to follow Frieren, thinking they shouldn't spend money unnecessarily. She sees Frieren entering an accessory shop, recalling a time when she styled Frieren's hair because it hadn't dried properly overnight. Curious about Frieren's interest in fashion, Fern tries to keep up, noticing Frieren's worried expression, something she's never seen before. As Fern watches, a black kitten approaches her, and she pets it. After some time, Frieren makes a purchase and leaves. Fern doesn't mind Frieren buying accessories, thinking it's better than buying strange bones or dubious substances. She decides to return to her shopping, but catches Frieren asking a man leaning against a wall for a shop selling tasty sweets. Fern thinks Frieren is crafty, mentioning she hasn't had sweets in months. Instead of continuing her shopping, Fern continues to spy on Frieren. She follows her into a tavern, where Frieren asks if they have tasty sweets. One of the patrons questions her sincerity, and Frieren mentions a mountain of delicious sweets in the city. The patrons, adventurers themselves, acknowledge Frieren's knowledge, as sweets are vital energy for them. Listening to the conversation, Fern follows Frieren as she heads to the inn. Fern apologizes for the delay, and Frieren assures her it's no problem, asking her to leave the purchases on the bed. Looking at the view, Frieren suggests they eat something delicious, as it's been a while. They go to a restaurant with a stunning view. Frieren apologizes for being doubted, and Fern asks if they have enough money for it. Frieren reassures her, saying they have savings. Fern asks what Frieren wants, and she hesitates, recalling Himmel's favorite dessert. Frieren asks how Himmel knew, and Fern explains they've been traveling together for so long, he just knew somehow. Frieren admits she doesn't know much about them, and Himmel says she'll have to make an effort to learn. He mentions his favorite food, and his friend, the dwarf Eisen's, favorite as well. As for Priest Heider, Frieren interrupts, saying he likes alcoholic beverages, teasing him. Finally, back in the present, Frieren apologizes to Fern. As they enjoyed their meal, Fern asked Frieren why she was apologizing. Frieren replied that she didn't know much about Fern, hence didn't know what she liked. She then gave Fern a present, which Fern didn't remember was her birthday. Frieren gave her a beautiful hairpin, making Fern very grateful and happy. Fern told Frieren that her attempt to learn more about Fern made her very happy. Then Fern remarked that Frieren didn't know much about people's emotions. Next, we see Frieren closing the window and telling Fern it was time to leave. Fern walked alongside Frieren wearing her hairpin and asked if there was a specific goal in their journey. Frieren replied that there wasn't anything specific. It was just a trip for Frieren's personal hobby of collecting spells. However, she wanted to recreate the adventures she had with her companions as much as possible before they faded away. Fern asked if that was important to her, to which Frieren said she couldn't say and was trying to figure it out. Fern smiled and continued walking. Frieren noticed Fern had finally grown taller than her, to which Fern replied that she was 16 now, becoming a lady. Frieren found it odd since they practically eat the same things. They then arrived at the Grurb forest in the Central Lands. Frieren used her magic to attack Fern, helping her learn a new defensive magic technique. Fern managed to defend herself, and Frieren praised her progress. Frieren decided to put it into practice and unleashed another skill on Fern, aiming for her defense opening. If it wasn't a simulation, Fern would have died. Fern created a shield that enveloped her body like a bubble, defending against Frieren's attacks. After using several abilities, Frieren decided to stop for the day. Defensive magic is powerful but consumes a lot of mana. Fern suggested partially expanding the shield to conserve mana, which Friaren agreed with. As they walked, they encountered a precarious log they needed to cross. Fern mentioned she had been training defensive magic recently, to which Friaren responded that their survival depended on it, as one defensive spell could defend against most offensive spells. Friaren asked if Fern had read the magic chronicles she had given her, emphasizing that magic wasn't just about combat. Friaren felt she might have to read them to Fern before bedtime. However, Fern insisted she could read them on her own, as she wasn't a child anymore. They then arrived at a village. Fern asked if Friaren was looking for another strange magic. Friaren said no, this time it was different. 3 men were conversing, and the girls approached to ask a question. The old man recognized Friaren as an elf due to her white hair and ears. He asked if she was Friaren, surprising her. He then said she wanted to know where Qual was sealed and stood up to take her there. Fern wondered, Qual? The old man explained that Qual was the ancient sage of corruption, the demon who committed numerous atrocities in the land 80 years ago, and Hero Himmel and his companions sealed him. Friaren explained she had come to the village to exterminate him because the seal would soon disappear. As she grew curious about how he knew, the old man explained that until about 30 years ago, Himmel would visit the village annually, asking about the seal and often talking about Friaren. Himmel told the old man that Friaren had an icy heart for never visiting the village. However, he always believed that she wouldn't be so cold as to forget the village and would come when the seal was about to break. Next, we see the gigantic demon sealed. Friaren approached, touched the demon, and remarked that the seal was very unstable. They would remove it the next day and exterminate Qual. In the middle of the night, the two conversed on a bunk bed. Fern asked if Friaren had created the seal and if there was a reason for it. Friaren replied that in summary, Qual was very strong. They couldn't defeat him because Qual was an incredible sorcerer in the Demon King's army. He created a spell called Zoltrak, the first piercing magic. It not only pierced humans, but also bypassed equipment resistance and directly destroyed the body. About 40% of adventurers and 70% of mages in the region were killed by this ability. Fern worried that Qual might be too strong for them. Friaren confirmed that he was extremely strong, but said the spell backfired on him. Fern didn't understand, so Friaren remarked that she really hadn't read the Magic Chronicles. Fern said she would read them right then, but Friaren said it wasn't necessary. She needed a good night's sleep, and she would understand tomorrow. The next morning, Friaren removed the seal from the demon and asked Fern not to let her guard down. As the seal was removed, the demon quickly rose. He wondered how many years had passed since he last saw Friaren. Friaren replied that it had been 80 years. He was surprised it was only 80, but for the elf and him, 80 years was nothing. He asked about the Demon King, and Friaren replied that she and her companions had killed the Demon King. Thus, Qual sought revenge. Friaren asked Fern to use the frontal defense magic. The demon unleashed the Zoltrak magic, surprised that they blocked it, thinking it was an advanced defense magic. Friaren explained that after Qual was sealed, mages across the continent studied, researched, and analyzed Zoltrak. In a few years, it was incorporated into the human magic system, and new defensive magic based on it emerged. Equipment resistance to magic also increased considerably, and Zoltrak no longer killed people. It was now considered a common attack magic. 80 years is a long time for humans. If Qual cooperated, Friaren and Fern would give him a quick death. Qual analyzed everything Friaren said and concluded it was a complex technique that must consume a lot of mana. Friaren told Fern that Qual had already discovered the weakness of the defense magic. She then asked if Fern could handle it, and Fern replied yes, as she had seen it all in her training. Friaren asked Fern to protect her. Qual began launching various magical powers intending to make Fern use up all her mana using defense magic. As Fern defended herself and Friaren using defense magic, Friaren prepared a magical power to launch at Qual. Qual never imagined he could be destroyed by Friaren. Then she unleashed the very magic Qual created, Zoltrak, upon himself. And he is finally defeated, Just as Friaren said, the spell turned against the sorcerer. Next, we see Fern sitting in a cart with her bags packed, reading the magic chronicles. Friaren was talking to the villagers. The old man thanked her because now they could live in peace. Friaren recognized the hat he had on his back. He said he had that hat because the sun was very strong in that region during the season. That hat was a great friend to the farmers. Friaren had the impression she had seen it somewhere before, and then she put it on the old man's head and remembered him from when she was a child when he played a prank on her by lifting her skirt. Then she recalls that moment. Himmel was very angry when he saw the boy lift her friend's skirt and shouted, asking what he was doing, calling him a rotten brat. He wanted to kill the kid because he just wanted to see what was there. After remembering, Friaren looks at him, saying he was still alive, and he tells her that thanks to her, he would live longer. Then we see the girls in the cart, and Fern tells Friaren that the old man really showed his gratitude. Friaren doesn't think it was directly because those people in that village believed in Himmel. But for Fern, Himmel believed in Friaren.